Hello, everyone. So we will go ahead and get started right on time at 1 p.m. Welcome to the webinar titled Scroll Less, Talk More, Humanizing the Online Learning Experience. My name is Dr. Anwar Hijaz, and I'm a political science faculty member at Saddleback College and a faculty mentor at the CVC at One. I'm very pleased to introduce our wonderful speaker today. We have with us Ryan Hitch, who is an instructional specialist in distance education at Chaffey College and a longtime English instructor in the California Community College system. With nearly 10 years of experience at institutions like Saddleback, Norco, Cerritos, and many other colleges, he specializes in online pedagogy, accessibility, and equity. He contributed to OER textbook How Arguments Work and regularly leads professional development on accessible course design and regular substantive interaction. As a former community college student, Ryan brings a practical student-centered approach to humanizing the online experience. So I have a few announcements before we get started on the webinar today. During the webinar, we will be sharing out a survey. We really appreciate if you can fill out the survey. This gives the CVC an opportunity to improve on future webinars. And the next thing is that while CVC at One does not provide badges for attending this webinar, we can provide you with confirmation of attendance by submitting the survey. So please stay till the end and fill out the survey, and you can use that confirmation as proof of your attendance. With that being said, I will go ahead and move it to you, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming to my webinar today. I think Anwar did a fantastic job introducing it, so I'm going to just sort of jump right in. I probably won't even really need to spend any time on this introduction slide, right? So I am Ryan Hitch, an instructional specialist faculty in the D department at Chaffey College, recently hired and happy to be here. I'm also on the executive team at DECO. And I guess I want to emphasize again that I have in the past been an English instructor at Saddleback College, Norco College, and Cerritos College. If you're not like very familiar with those institutions, that's Southern California. I think that's relevant in the context that a lot of the examples I'll provide later in this webinar are English specific, but I don't think that they necessarily have to be English specific. I think a lot of what we talk about here today has application across the disciplines. Now, in terms of the webinar itself.
I'm so sorry. Do you mind doing
Yeah.
full screen on
Oh,
your
yeah,
slides?
sure. That's,
Thank you so much.
there we go. Oh, no, hold on.
It's okay if
Gosh,
it's,
hold on. Let me,
no worries at all if it's not. I just figured it might be easier for everyone to see.
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think I just need to reshare my screen. Uh, didn't set it up that way. Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So, I think the real beginning of this webinar starts as any great webinar starts with an epic origin story. That's right. And my epic origin story begins with the Norco College Puente program. So in academic year 21-22, I had the honor to serve as Norco College's Puente English coordinator. If you're unfamiliar with the Puente program, I actually happen to be wearing a shirt today. I'm a Puente mentor at Chaffey College, 100%. Yep. Um, One big concept in the Puente program is this concept of familia. It's a student cohort program that intentionally builds belonging and community for and between students and faculty. The reason why I bring that up is just to make the point that in this academic year, I very much had things like community and belonging on my mind. right? But then this event happens, as is the case in all origin stories. Specifically, my counseling coordinator and I decided that we were going to take out the vans. That's right. Mid-semester, we wanted to take the students on a 60-mile trip into downtown LA to visit the immersive Frida Kahlo exhibit at the Lighthouse Art Space. If you've never been to the Frida Kahlo exhibit, I have good news and bad news. The good news is it's incredible. It was truly a life-changing experience. The Lighthouse Art Space is this incredible physical location which projects the art onto the walls of the location, and students get to immerse themselves in Frida Kahlo's art. The bad news is it's very much closed. So yeah, we caught it just in the nick of time. Um, as it relates to this origin story, though, I was excited about the destination and a little bit unhappy that I was going to be one of our drivers to take the students in. I'm sure many of us have had similar experiences where there's a field trip and the call goes out, hey, we need drivers. Is anyone willing to drive our students in to such and such a destination? And you might think to yourself, not me, not today. So as we approached the date, I felt my anxiety rising. I thought, man, like, can't we just get a bus? We have the money. But on the day of, something kind of unexpected happened. We started the day very early in the morning, and to anybody who's taught an early morning class, um, you would know my students were very sleepy, right? So it was a very slow start in the morning. But as we piled the students into my van and got started with the driving, a change took over in the van. My students didn't just wake up, they started talking to each other and talking to each other in a way that they had not been talking to each other in the classroom, at least not in a way I had ever observed. And they started having fun, and I started having fun. And the funny thing is, I felt like we had achieved the purpose of our field trip before we ever actually reached the destination. I had a blast on that car ride into LA. It's not to say that I didn't enjoy the Frida Kahlo exhibit, because I did. But when we had finished that exhibit, I was just as excited to drive home. Weird, but true. And the thing is, I learned something. I learned that spaces matter. It's really the focus of today's webinar. The same way that being on campus or in a classroom or really a cramped van, as the case may be, it doesn't all work the same way. I, I would propose that not all online spaces are equally conducive to making authentic connections. I would argue to all of you here today that Canvas discussion boards, while they're very familiar to students, certainly to I think everybody here on the call, they carry an inherent cognitive and affective barrier. They're assignments. Yeah, we may ask students to make a friend, learn about your classmate, contribute to the conversation. But as soon as you put a point value on that interaction, I I question how real that is anymore. This orientation primes students to treat participation as a checkbox rather than a conversation, diminishing spontaneity, connection, authentic engagement. Um, Thus, I really want to share some strategies that I've been working on as inspired by these experiences and the theories behind them. Before we get too much deeper, though, I need a break with all the talking because I got more talking to do. I think it might be cool to engage the audience, right? So I have a little Mentimeter set up. If you've never used this before, it's pretty neat. And if you have, you already know what to do. You can use your phone, scan the QR code. You can go to menti.com, type in the code that you see up here on the screen, 7829 3510. Question of the day is, what words come to mind when you think about humanizing the online classroom? My thinking is this. I imagine if you're on this webinar, like you probably want to learn more. So that much is clear. But I imagine there are going to be some people who are really motivated, they've had successes, and they're just looking to build on that. And I imagine there are probably other people who have really struggled with this. I did for quite some time. And maybe this is like your final effort. No pressure on me, of course. And I'm just kind of like wanting to dig into that a little bit. So I will actually exit out of full screen for just a moment. Gosh, hold on. Let's go back one. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Oh, wow. What a beautiful little word cloud. So if you've never used Mentimeter before, as people type in similar words, so two people type in the same word, that word becomes bigger, and that frequency sort of enhances the word. So what words come to mind when you think about humanizing the online classroom? I'm seeing connection, engagement, authenticity. I love this. This is like such a cool, welcoming space. I was a little nervous people were going to put up skeptical or frustrating or something, I guess a little more negative, but this is really cool. Let this go on for another maybe 15 seconds or something. See 38 participants. I'm wondering as people are putting this in the Mentimeter, does anyone have any questions?
No question, but there was a comment that came in.
Oh, yeah.
It says if you've ever seen student comments about online discussion boards on, say, Reddit or other internet forums, you will know they say they hate them because of what Ryan just said.
Yes. I see that too, actually, now. Thank you for pointing that out to me. You're making me, therefore, I hate it. Absolutely agree, Cynthia. I think there's something about taking away a student's autonomy, right? Transforming it into that assignment, which just totally rips away the authenticity of that. And that is actually something that I want to address with the strategies that I'm going to talk about today. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. They feel forced from both the student and teacher perspective. Yeah, 100%, Debbie. Awesome. Okay, so let's jump back into this. You got more ground to cover. Let's see, slideshow. Yeah. Okay. So the first strategy that I want to talk about, um, partner assignments. Now, when I say those two words, partner assignments, I'm sure some of you might be thinking of this. And certainly that's how it started with me. Um, I, the first semester, I tried anything with group work. I had a very vague, fuzzy idea of what I was attempting to do. I assigned my students a group essay. I'm here to tell you right now, it was a very poor idea. Poorly conceived, poorly executed, poorly received. I don't recommend group essays. But what happened was I kept at it. I listened to what my students were telling me. And as I continued to iterate and innovate, I landed on something that was distinctly not what we're seeing on this slide. And that's actually what I want to share with you. Not this, but this instead. So the version of partner assignments that I found that did work best for my English courses were a series of low stakes assignments starting like maybe a quarter to a third of the way into the term, continuing at regular intervals until the end of the term. My rationale for that is I need an opportunity to get to know my students better. And I think my students also need an opportunity to get to know themselves a little bit better. So I want to try to create a space for them to do that before I try to make any moves with setting up partners. The second bullet point on the right, though, I think is actually even more crucial. Before the first partner assignment, I'll actually create a pre-assignment that explains what's coming, and I'll ask students a few questions that'll help guide me in assigning their partners. Exact questions will vary like from semester to semester, but one key question I believe is really the ingredient to success. And that would be, what is your level of interest in having a partner? One key pain point that I have observed anytime that I've done group work, be it pairs, be it groups of five, is a mismatch in levels of motivation. Some students really want it, some students want it less. And so by asking this question, I don't give the students who respond with a low motivation a chance to opt out. But what I do is I will partner those low motivation students frequently, not always, with other low motivation students. It's okay to me if those two students treat it a little bit more like a business transaction. And if I give those medium or high interest students an opportunity to engage with other students who really want to be part of that process. Getting rid of that pain point then, for me as an instructor, I found this to be like a much smoother assignment, or really series of assignments where students are having a much more enjoyable experience. And I, as the instructor facilitating this, I'm having a much more enjoyable experience because I'm not chasing down students who are either not responding to their partner or vice versa, or complaining about a partner who's a little bit extra, as the case may be. The actual assignment itself has a couple parts to it. So there'd be instructions. There's the list of assigned partners. There is the list of partner questions, and then the submission instructions. Uh, The submission instructions are really important. I'll kind of get into that on the next slide in just a moment, but the concept here is that I want them to document some part of their interaction to help me document the RSI of what's going on here. This is really, really heavy on student-to-student interaction, but it's not necessarily going to be happening on Canvas. To be explained momentarily. You may have noticed that some of these are hyperlinked out. Whoops, that was unintentional. I would love to share with you all, and I will be sharing at the end of this presentation a QR code that links you to this material. An example of what one of these partner assignments would look like. Yeah. So you've got these instructions up here at the top of the page, which pretty much as I've explained it to you, simply ask my student to find their partner, ask their partner questions, and then document that interaction and submit it back to the assignment in question. It is really tricky business to make an accessible table on Google Docs, so I chose not to do that. But typically, I would provide a table for the partner list. We'll circle back to why this is important later in the webinar, but for my very first partner assignment, typically what I'll do is I'll give them a guided way of reaching out to their partner. I don't want to make assumptions about whether or not they know who their partner is. So I'll say, hey, use our communication tool. In this case, Pronto. And then these are the questions. Down here, you've got the submission instructions. It's quite a bit of detail and information overload. So I'm curious, are there any questions?
A few questions that are coming
Oh,
in.
bunch of questions.
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with Roseanne. Can you share the questions that you asked students to assess their motivation for partner work? Oh, for sure. I did skip over that, didn't I, Roseanne? It's in the same document that I plan to share out at the end of this webinar. I just imagine because there's so much information here, it could be kind of overwhelming if like people are looking at this and they're also listening to me talk. But I do plan on sharing this out. So that pre-partner assignment is right up here. These are the questions I would say typically that I might share with students. So, what's your preferred name? Do you have preferred pronouns? I think that could be helpful information for both me and for another student. Do you have a major or a career goal? If I'm not sure how to partner two students together, I might try to partner them based on a shared major or career goal. What's your level of interest in having a class partner? What kind of interests do you have outside of school? Do you have a job or other commitments? What's your preferred method of communication? And then finally, do you have any requests about your partner? I can't necessarily honor everything, sometimes just for lack of information. I don't necessarily know everything about the person that I'm going to partner my student with, but I would rather ask and have that information to work with than not have it. Hopefully that answers Roseanne's question. Then we've got Christy. Do you have students contact each other outside of Canvas? So that's jumping ahead, but the answer is yes, to be explained as to how that happens. Why use Pronto over Canvas inbox? Jumping ahead as well, but to be explained. There is a rationale there. Can you talk about the assignments you give for the group activity? What is suitable? Oh my gosh, I'm anticipating all these questions. They are all going to be addressed. Ah, this is awesome. Are groups of two preferable over groups of three or four? I'll comment on that one from Daniel Tet. So I had originally started with the group essay, which was, I want to say, 4 students, 1 assignment. And I found what was really problematic about a group essay in which there were 4 students working on 1 assignment is it was really challenging to suss out who was doing what, when, and how. There were a lot of variables. So I don't know that it has to be 2 people, but the reason why I like having 2 people working on something is because it keeps it really simple for me, and I believe it keeps it simple for my students. Uh, how much time does it take you to assign student groups? So Kirsty, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I believe I've been misreading your name. Kirsty, how much time does it take me to assign student groups? I think that would be dependent on the number of students I had in the class. Students don't take a lot of time to answer these questions. In my experience, I'm getting typically 1 to 2 sentences for each answer. So I'd say in a class of 30, it might take me 20 to 30 minutes to decide who I want to partner with who. And then I may keep partners until midterms, or I might keep them until the end of the semester. You're only assigning the groups once and then done. Pronto's probably out of the scope of what we're going to do today, but I absolutely endorse Pronto as a tool. I'm going to pause on questions for just a moment, but I do want to return to them, right? So it looks like John at 122 is where I left off, if someone can help me keep up with that. Because I feel like some of these I'm just going to start losing track, considering I am confident that I am going to start addressing some of these in the next couple of slides. I don't want people to think I'm ignoring them, but I think I'm going to start ending up going out of order unless I get back on track. Okay. Glad people are engaged though. That's exciting. So let's get back to it. How students communicate. This was one of those questions, right? This idea of maybe communicating outside of Canvas. And this is actually what connects this partner work back to my realization about online spaces. How are those things connected? So the first partner assignment will provide some guidance to students on connecting. I might tell them, contact your partner through Canvas inbox, use Pronto. Ultimately, it's whatever tool that you're using in your course. I don't think that really matters. However, that only serves as a bridge to what's mutually agreed upon between the two students who work as partners. I think it's hard to know what space is going to work for those students beyond the basic principle that they should get to pick. If I tell my students, nope, you have to use Pronto, then I've kind of turned it into Canvas discussions, except now it's Canvas discussions and it looks like Pronto. To my mind, part of the magic of partner assignments is that students, to Cynthia's earlier point, get to reclaim a little bit of autonomy in the way that they go about completing this assignment. Some of my students, that said, will choose to stay in Canvas inbox. It's convenient, it's school related, it keeps things simple. Other students move to social media, which I kind of like just on the premise that it helps them get to know each other better. Other students will call or text each other, and a rare few, it does happen, will meet up in person. And this kind of closes the loop then on wanting to have your students document this. Absolutely, you would want them to take pictures, screenshots, do something, and then have them submit that documentation back to the original partner assignment on Canvas. So that you as an instructor can say, yes, my students are connecting with each other. That student to student interaction is being facilitated. Let me show you. Okay. In terms of the questions themselves, I think that there's some real potential here. So the first partner assignment always asks students to establish a communication plan. This is another common pain point with partner assignments. First couple iterations of partner assignments, I constantly had student emails about so and so hasn't messaged me. It's been 2 days. Am I going to fail? No, probably not. But now I have to do something about it. Um, so now I ask students at the start of every partner assignment sort of series of assignments a couple of basic questions. What platform do they want to communicate with? What days and times are best for communicating? What happens if they don't hear from each other? Having that sort of backup plan in place. I think if students ask each other those questions and get those answers ahead of time, oh my gosh, it saves them a whole lot of trouble. And as a faculty member, it saves me a whole lot of trouble. Suddenly, I'm not fielding nearly as many questions from students about what to do if so and so doesn't get back to me by such and such a date. Um, Beyond that, I do provide a mix of questions related to instructional content. I might ask students to peer review an essay. I might ask students to do some work related to thesis statements. I think this is where that cross-discipline applicability really comes into play, because I think the actual instructional content is really incidental. You could just as well ask students to quiz each other on art history terms or to engage in work on biology. But what I'll do is I'll also try to sneak in some questions that I think will help my partners bond or get to know each other better. Because one thing that I do acknowledge is that it's really hard to talk to strangers. It's really hard to talk to the 86 participants on this call. I'm super nervous right now. I definitely appreciate that people are writing their questions in the chat and I get a chance to read them before responding. That helps. So, actually, speaking of questions and speaking of the chat, let's see what people are responding to. Uh, so John asked, how many students do I have in a course? Typically for English, it varies between like 25 and 35 in most of the courses that I've been teaching. Scott asked, what happens when one partner does zero effort towards the work or even drops the class? Um, that's a little bit in the design of what a partner assignment is. And so I think it might be good to go back to that and just to kind of demonstrate what a typical partner assignment really asks my students to do. But in terms of what happens if somebody drops the class, occasionally what I'll do is I'll simply ask one of my partners, my groups of two, to absorb that third student. Typically, those drops don't happen until maybe half or like 2/3 of the way into the semester. And so by then I have a pretty good sense of both who the remaining student is and who the two students are that I'm asking to absorb into their group, I guess, right? What's the terminology there? Point is, I have a pretty good idea about the group dynamics, and it's easy enough to suss out who that essentially group of three is going to be. Yes, as Chelsea points out, not every institution has Pronto. It is a Canvas add-on. One of the things that we'll be talking about in the second half of this webinar is Canvas Chat as well, which I think is a suitable replacement for Pronto. Debbie asked, when I go to groups, they get individual grades based on their own effort, and I do group peer reviews, so I have a collaboration grade as well. Talk to text typos. Can you view the student communication in Pronto? Ask Kirsty. So Kirsty asked a really good question. Can you view the student communication in Pronto? When I'm asking my students to do this kind of work where they're collaborating in Pronto and also submitting to Canvas, naturally some of you might be wondering, well, where am I as an instructor kind of like intervening, facilitating, monitoring? It's a good question. I try to exist in the space where my students are also existing. So if my students are working in Pronto, that's where I try to be. But it's super hard to keep track of 30 students who might be posting like 3 times each in Pronto, which is why I also ask them to individually document their work, post that back to Canvas. I'll pause on questions real quick. I do appreciate the positive feedback. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Susan. Um, Pause real quick on this. Go back to the assignment real quick because I want to demonstrate what a typical partner assignment might look like. Okay, so this is the very first partner assignment that I would give students in the beginning of a partner assignment cycle. Do you have a preferred name or pronoun? Let's say that Nancy and I are partnered up together. My job would be to ask Nancy that question. Nancy's job would be to answer and then ask me that question. We'd go down this list of questions doing that same thing. Nancy, what's your preferred way to communicate? Are there any bad times for communicating? Do you have a second job that like would stop you from communicating on Tuesdays? What's your major? Going down that list, I would ask Nancy all of those questions. Once I'm done, all I would do is screenshot to prove to Professor Hitch that, yeah, like that interaction definitely happened. Submit that screenshot to Canvas, and I'm good to go. So in terms of students who like aren't pulling their full weight, it's really designed to be an all or nothing thing. Either students are interacting or they aren't. And so that's where this idea of low interest students and like medium interest students really comes in. You've got your low interest students working with your low interest students who really just trade answers. They don't even ask each other questions. They give each other the answers. That's fine. But for your medium or high interest students, they actually are just having a conversation with each other that looks like this in a space of their choosing. In terms of how this might kind of like coalesce and build into something, I won't get into the details now because it's kind of complicated. But 3C, partner project, as you see it right here, is something where I'm taking these small partner assignments and trying to build them into something quite a bit bigger. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of direction on where this is all going. And as I keep saying, I do plan on uh, sharing out on this momentarily. So let's jump back into this. Gosh, wrong button. Okay. So we talked a bit about partner assignments. I want to jump into synchronous communication, instant messaging, essentially. And when some of you hear instant messaging, I imagine it conjures to your mind an image that looks like this. It's quite frightening. Faculty are overworked enough as is. The idea of getting that many notifications on your phone, they start to float out around the image. I couldn't quite get AI to make it the way I wanted it to. So there you go. That's quite frightening. And as I try to experiment with instant messaging in my class, much like much like partner assignments, the first couple attempts were not so great. But through iteration and innovation, I did get to something I'm pretty happy with. And I'm really excited to share it with all of you here today. So let's break that down. When I think back to what made driving around in the van to LA and back so much fun, it's not simply that we were removed away from the classroom. Like, yeah, that helped. But actually, it's that there were fewer barriers to communication. We could all be talking at the same time, and that was okay. If all 83 of us unmuted on Zoom right now and started talking, it would be chaos. And all that talking and listening and responding was happening in real time, which typically you don't see on Canvas discussions or in Inbox. Yes, it was really noisy in the van. That shouldn't be an everyday thing. But it was also really real, which is something that I would argue we need a lot more of in this AI driven world. I would not say this is my only motivation for doing something like this, but I would point out to you that when I engage in instant messaging with my students, it's a really nice, friendly reminder that they're real people and not these just like chat bot message machines just posting things at me. It's a really nice feeling to have an instantaneous, real time sort of communication with somebody, even if it is through text. Like, that's fine. So, I kind of want to dig into this. And I think that would probably start with the tools, although I do see the chat starting to blow up again a little bit. Oh my gosh. I have to go back a little bit. Okay. Nasranas, how many partners for each assignment? So the way that I have these partner assignments set up is that the whole class gets partnered up. If I have 30 students in my class, then that's going to be 15 sets of partners, i.e. 2 students essentially. You can create small groups in Pronto. Michelle, thank you. What percentage of their overall grade is from partner assignments? Kirsty asked another great question. Um, I would say that partner assignments are a low stakes assignment. They're not meant to be summative in any form or sense. So while I think the exact percentage can vary, it shouldn't be high. For me, partner assignments were one of a couple different types of assignments in a single category. That single category was weighted at 20%. If I had to estimate, I'd say all the partner assignments put together were maybe like 5% of my students' grade. It was very, very small. Oh, thank you for such a wonderful compliment. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Sile Bassi. And Nancy, thank you for answering my partner questions. Ah, loving the chat. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay, back to it. So in terms of synchronous communication tools, Canvas chat, it's a thing. If you haven't been using it, I highly encourage you to check it out. You may need to enable it from your course navigation tools. Um, Give it a try. Play around with it a little bit, perhaps in a sandbox course first. Um, Canvas Chat and Pronto are where I personally have the most amount of experience. They have the added benefit of working within Canvas, creating ease of use for students and ease of RSI documentation for faculty. This, along with accessibility and FERPA considerations, A plus there. If you decide you want to experiment with tools beyond those two, perhaps because your campus doesn't have Pronto or you feel like Canvas Chat just is insufficient, just make sure that you check in with your Campus D department around any policies for using those tools. I can think of Discord. I saw that in the chat. That's definitely an equivalent in a lot of ways to Pronto. Slack is another one that I think is a good equivalent. And I'm pretty sure there are many others that faculty are leaning on besides those two that are top of mind for me. In terms of how you get started, I'm hoping I can help everybody avoid a huge mistake I made really early on in this. My first time using Pronto, I presented it to students. I said, here, this is a thing we're doing. And then nothing. I didn't follow through. I just kind of assumed students would know what to do. And they didn't. I mean, they probably did. They just didn't want to. So beyond building this into your syllabus or just announcing it at the beginning of the course, I really feel that it's important you incentivize your students to get onto the platform and use it. Typically, what I'll do is I'll run a discussion style post once, reply twice, kind of Canvas assignment. And then students complete their work on Pronto, with the submission being that students screenshot their work and upload that screenshot on Canvas, the Canvas assignment that sent them there. So as you can see, I keep going back and referencing these assignments that I've been working on. Maybe I'll go back one more time just so you can visually see what I'm referring to. Okay. So this was the first partner assignment. I'll scroll back up here to the top. 3B partner assignment. In the instructions for the first official partner assignment, you all have to use Pronto. Nancy and I were going to be connecting on Pronto together. So whatever interaction that I need to document with Nancy will be a Pronto interaction. That's actually not the only example of this. There's also one, if we look in my nice little outline, this is an extra credit assignment that I pulled from an old class. If we scroll down a little bit, I snuck a little Pronto incentive into my extra credit assignment. Share whether you agree or disagree with this particular essay and respond to two other people in the class. But students are going to be submitting a PDF that contains screenshots documenting all of these things. I realize that if you're looking at this right now and this feels really valuable, you might be like, oh my gosh, slow down. I have 100 questions for you. Rest assured, link is coming. You will have as much time as you need, along with my contact information too, if you have any follow-up questions. So let's see. Over here. Yeah, I think we're through with this one. So here's the goal, and then I'll check out the chat after I get through this slide. If you only ever tell students to post on Pronto, then you've just now turned Canvas discussion into Pronto, right? You're giving it a grade, you're telling students what to do. You've taken away their autonomy. As Cynthia very rightly observed at the beginning of this webinar, you told them what to do and now they hate it. The goal here instead is to build up inertia. I may have an English major, but I know a couple STEM things. Build up inertia by way of students getting familiar with the platform and recognizing they can interact with other students on there or even you without you having to tell them what to do. they just start creeping on there because they know that other students use that platform too. And in that sense, it becomes yet another space online that students can occupy. Thus, I might weave Pronto into their first partner assignment. I might make sort of fun, non-critical posts on there as well. It won't be anything critical or related to the class. I might just share pictures of my dogs, things of that nature, something fun. Checking out the chat real quick. Yeah. Jim Julius makes a good point about whether a tool is beneficially adopted or licensed by your college. That's why I do want to emphasize that it's important to check in with your college's DE department, who's going to have that information on the ready about how your college is interacting with a particular tool. If you're unfamiliar with Canvas Chat and maybe you just want to learn about it a little more, maybe send me an email after this. I'd be happy to chat with you about it, unintended. We're getting close to the end of this webinar, and some of you might be thinking, what about the research? And if some of you aren't thinking, what about the research? Then I would kindly remind you, I'm a stranger you met on the internet like 40 minutes ago. So you should be asking that question, what about the research? I have a couple of things that I found to kind of share with all of you. First one, I have to preface, I'm not a sociologist. I hope I'm not really misinterpreting this, but I believe I'm onto something here. Kim et al. Shares in Discord Design Encourages Third Place Social Media Experiences some really interesting observations about a concept called third space. If you've heard that term at all, it's probably in relationship to Starbucks. Starbucks is considered a third space by a lot of folks. To orient that for you, home is really considered a first space. Work or maybe school is considered a second space. So you've got first space being very like comfortable, it's full of your values, your background, whereas second space is like this other, it's occupied, it's different. Third space is this in between area where people from different backgrounds can get together and connect. Typically, it's been thought of as a physical environment, the same way that my van, physical environment. But a lot of emerging research, you'll notice this is a 2025 article, has started reorienting that conversation into digital spaces. This idea that third spaces can exist online as well, which reinforces a lot of what we've talked about today. Then you've got another really interesting article. Kim et al.'s social media isn't just Instagram. So I think that there's some misperception I'm guilty of, which is that our students are all digital natives. They love being online. It's all the same to them. And what I felt this research article really disproved is mm, not all online experiences are built the same. Youth envision platforms that foster genuine emotional connection through real-time presence. Current emotional platforms feel flat and emotionally disconnected. Youth, that is, our traditional, not post-traditional, but traditional community college students, really valued synchronous interactions that create a sense of coexistence. It gets back to that idea I shared of something real in our AI-driven world. And then finally, he's got this idea of universal design for learning. To what end have I been sharing all of this? Certainly, it's nice to foster student to student interaction and it checks that RSI box, but like, why? Well, I would argue that this work really parallels multiple means of engagement, specifically fostering belonging and community, which is a huge driver of student success. It's critical to design learning environments where learners feel a legitimate sense of belonging and community. That's how you create learners that can sustain effort and persistence. And that's really what we're doing with this work. So some final thoughts, although perhaps take a quick pit stop, check out the chat. Uh, can Pronto be used in the middle of the semester without being mentioned in the course syllabus? Um, it's like a highly technical question. I think what you would owe to your students is just making sure that they're properly onboarded into Pronto, right? So making sure to provide lots of videos and guides, being very clear and explicit about how you want to use Pronto. But I don't think that just because you're mid-semester, it means that you're sworn off from the tool until next semester. That's a personal opinion. I'm not sure if maybe there's another perspective that I'm missing there. Uh, Synchronous opportunities for interaction can be tricky in an asynchronous class. Would you recommend options for those who cannot attend? Teresa asked a really interesting question, which I think makes me realize that I didn't properly explain something. Um, for synchronous communication, instant messaging, part of what I'm proposing in the way that I have it set up is that there is no planned synchronicity, I suppose. I think that would be the correct word. So when I typically use the word synchronous, I imagine it evokes, for a lot of folks, Zoom. And it evokes this idea of a planned time from 1 to 2 in which we will all be here together. But typically, the way I've deployed synchronous communication or instant messaging is much more ad hoc, which is to say that I'm creating a space where students can get on and message each other, but I'm not telling them when. So some of my students will message each other late at night. Some of my students will message each other early in the morning. And that's entirely okay. And that can also be the difference between some classes that really succeed at this and some classes that don't, because the chemistry just isn't there. And that actually gets into, it's a good transition for final thoughts. I don't know. If you've made it to the end of this webinar and you don't know how you're going to work any of these ideas into your course, I think that's okay. I hope that didn't happen, but I think it's okay if it did. One thing I hope folks take away from my webinar is how often I don't know things. It's pretty frequent. Like how great that ride into LA would be, or which version of partner assignments would work the best, or why one class thrives on Pronto better than another. And I assure you, even now, as I have things figured out, that's often the case. If you don't know, I believe you're in good company, and I encourage you to keep thinking and trying. Most students want authentic connection with their peers and their instructors. It's really my number one takeaway today. All students who find that connection will benefit from it. I can't think of a single situation where a student found authentic connection and was worse off for it. That's more instructors might not experience this with their online students, I believe, has a lot to do with different disconnects that we experience online. And the last thing I hope people take away from this webinar is the value in doing something that meets that demand from students. Like, it's worth the effort. It's so incredibly worth the effort. Oh my gosh. So many great stories I could tell if only I had 2 hours instead. I'd have so much fun. But instead, I'm going to use my very last minute or two with all of you here today to share out on some support and resources. So as promised, if you scan that QR code, or I guess I can drop the link in the chat too. I'll do that momentarily. This QR code will take you to that further reading. It's an accessible Google document that contains all of the assignments you saw today in this webinar. It also contains a link to, I don't know, just further reading if you're interested in this whole humanizing online education thing. I imagine some of you will have additional questions that I probably just don't have time to answer, but I do have email. Don't have time, do have email. So you're welcome to shoot me a message. I'd be happy to engage. This is a topic I'm very passionate about, and I'm super, super grateful that you all had time to come out today and listen to me talk for a whole hour. Oh my gosh. I think that concludes my share screen anyway.
Thank you so much,
Um,
Ryan. Do you have
yeah,
the link to your slides? I know a few people have
yeah,
messaged me directly.
yeah, sure.
If you can drop those in, that would be amazing. I'm going
Happy
to
to
just
do
give a
so.
few announcements, and then if we have time for one or two more questions, maybe we can take those, if that's okay.
Yeah,
So thank you so much, everyone, for attending the webinar. Before you go, please check the chat for the survey and take a moment to complete it. You'll receive a copy of your responses, which can serve as verification of your attendance. And of course, if you encounter any issues, you can reach out to the team at support@cvc.edu. That's support@cvc.edu. We also encourage you to explore our other webinars. I did drop the link in the chat. So Chief, if you don't mind like dropping it in again for the webinars. And then lastly, this webinar, the recordings and associated slides will be available on the CVC at One webinar site page. Please allow a few days for captioning before they're posted. Thank you all so much. We do have like a few more minutes, Ryan. If there are questions, people can put them either in the chat or in the Q&A
yeah,
option.
yeah. I'm trying to catch up right now to check out and see what questions there are.
Says, can you please post the
Um,
form again? I think they're talking about the
I
survey.
Let's see. And then there was also a question about the Google Doc specifically, which is at the end of the slides, but I don't mind. So Google Doc link. Yes. Okay. I'm scrolling back up to check for questions. Positive feedback, which I appreciate. Wonderful way to end the presentation. Would you be willing to share your PowerPoint? Yeah, of course. Oh, Jim Julius, thank you for adding on to that. That is good extra information to have. Uh,
I don't think I
yeah,
see
I think
any
we're good on
questions.
questions.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much. And we'll give you 2 extra minutes of your time of the day. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Oh, Amber, scroll less, talk more, humanizing the online learning experience. I caught one last question at the end.
All right. Thank you all so
Yeah,
much. Take care.
thank you.